Yep.
Welcome everyone to another cyber webinar. I recognize some names in the audience, so I'm really happy to see that you've been getting a lot or value from some of our prior webinars. So thank you for being a repeat guest. I appreciate it. Today is going to be a little bit of a different conversation and topic that I'm very excited about because I feel like we're hearing a lot of AI this, AI that, and it can create a lot of noise, and so it can be difficult sometimes to know what's actually practical and not what might be a little bit overhyped. There's a lot of great AI applications, but there's also a lot of, I think, things that are a little bit too overhyped and not that practical. And so today we're going to look at some practical examples, thanks to Ehor's presentation, that will show us how we can use AI to create more secure IAM policies. As you'll see, of course, it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to take care of every possible issue under the sun. But I think, and we will see whether it can, but I think it can help in a lot of situations. So that's going to be the focus on today's webinar and presentation. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with today's session. So to begin with, as we usually start with for these webinars, we're going to start with quick introductions of who I am and who Ehor is, just so that you know that we're not that we know a little bit of what we're talking about. And then after that, we'll dive into talking about IAM privilege escalation attacks, so that you can see some examples of what these attacks can look like, and also what can trigger this sort of vulnerability in an AWS environment, and how just even a single line of IAM policy can quickly escalate an attack like this. Then we'll transition to actually talking about using AI for generating secure IAM policies, which is what you're here for today. And then we'll look at some tools for detecting insecure IAM policies, which is really, really important. Finally, we'll start to wrap up by talking about how to implement some of that tooling and some of those approaches in your CI/CD pipelines so they can do this, or you can do this on an automated and more regular basis. Another very important topic. So on that note, let's go ahead and start with introductions. Ihor, if you would like to get started.
So, hello guys. I am lead security engineer at TechMagic, and actually, I was working with AWS for more than 4 years now. And probably, if you are talking about my main focus, we are helping teams to actually check if their application and infrastructures are secure and provide actionable recommendations that will help them to actually cover all the findings. Also, I have a background in security testing automation, and we help teams to actually build secure SDLC and embed some security testing tools in their existing processes. And also, in my spare time, I like to play different CTF because it is a way to test your skills, to see some new ways on how to exploit different services, how to play with them, and actually allowed to read books, allowed to get new knowledge, share my knowledge with other people, and actually to do some fancy stuff with virtual reality, with PV drones, and so on.
I also saw that you're a CTF player, a book lover, play chess, and love traveling. What's some of your top books that you're reading right now?
Actually, I am thinking about starting reading security chaos engineering because it is probably one of interesting topics, and it is about how you can intentionally try to break things and see if your infrastructure is resilient to that. If we are talking about some like non-technical books, that then it is extreme ownership. It is a great book from managers and everyone who wants to know how to actually lead teams, what are the main challenges and how to overcome them. So I definitely recommend it. And that's probably what it is on my current roadmap.
Two books that I've been wanting to read for a little while, so please let me know when you end up reading them. I'd love to get your feedback on what you thought. And also, thank you for joining us from Ukraine. How do you pronounce that city? Sorry, you cut out.
Lviv.
Lviv. Okay, that's what I thought. I just didn't want to butcher it. So, okay, thank you. Appreciate the introduction. Switching over to my side, a little bit about me. I'm the founder and trainer at Cyber, CYBR, spelled like this with this logo. I have about 8 years, a little bit over 8 years of AWS experience. and my background primarily in web development, application building, application security, and then transitioning more so towards AWS cloud and then AWS security. Once I got tired of hosting applications on really crappy hosting services back in the day, and everybody was talking about how awesome AWS was, so I was like, I've got to check it out. And yeah, the rest is history. It kind of changed my life. I also reside in beautiful state of Colorado in the United States, and as you can see, I love skiing, but I also love hiking when it's out of season. A quick OSINT challenge if anybody wants to participate. If anyone in the audience can tell me where this picture was taken, then you will get extra points. Good luck. I think that's a pretty tough challenge unless you're an avid skier, especially in Colorado. That might be a little tough, but let me know if you know. I'd be interested to see. Okay, so with introductions out of the way, just a quick mention as we get going into the technical stuff. If you've never used this Zoho webinar software that we're currently using today, you have the option to ask questions. So you should see a tab, I think it's at the bottom or somewhere around there, that's got a question mark with a bubble. You can click on that. It's called Q&A. And as we go along with the presentation, you can ask us questions. So you don't have to wait till the end. If you want, if you prefer waiting till the end, then feel free to do that by all means. But we'll also be fielding questions as we go along. So as soon as it pops in your head, you can go into that tab, you can type your message, and it will ask a question. And then I can, either myself or Ihor can present that question to the audience, and then we can answer it live for you. So these are meant to be very interactive. It's not just us presenting to you. We want you to get a lot of value out of this. So as you have questions, please go ahead and submit them. Now, what are privilege escalations to begin with? What does that actually mean? And what does that look like? Well, in very simple terms, a privilege escalation is an attacker going from lower level privileges to higher level privileges. And so, in terms of what that means for Amazon Web Services, Amazon Web Services, or really cloud in general, not even just AWS, we're talking about an attacker finding a way in through an IAM user or user in general. Maybe they got access to the username and password. Maybe they get access to their access keys. We'll talk about a couple of examples of how that could happen. Or maybe they somehow got access to temporary role credentials, or maybe even a resource that was misconfigured, let's say an EC2 instance or an ECS or AKS container that had some sort of vulnerability, but the attacker gains access to whatever those credentials are, but their access is limited. They can't do a whole lot with their current access. Whoever was in charge of implementing security did a fairly good job, but as we'll see, they made a critical mistake, but they did a fairly good job of trying to implement least privilege. And so the attacker is now trying to go from that lower level privilege to a higher level privilege, and they'll do this through a privilege escalation path. Now, a lot of times when we think of privescs, we think about trying to get admin level permissions. So that's the crown at the top there, right? You're the king of the castle if you get admin level permissions for that AWS environment. So that's the ideal for an attacker, and that's the worst case nightmare scenario for the defender. But the thing to keep in mind, and I think something that a lot of times people forget, is you don't even necessarily need to get admin level permissions. Even without admin level permissions, you can still do a ton of damage in cloud environments. One example of that is you could launch really big EC2, even ECS, EKS resources for crypto mining specifically. And you might wake up the next day with thousands of dollars of bills from that because those GPU intensive instances are very expensive. Or, as another very common example, the attacker might be able to exfiltrate sensitive data even without admin level permissions. They might get access to a database, for example, an RDS database, S3 bucket, things like that. Again, very common examples that we keep seeing about in the news every year at this point, which is unfortunate. Or they might be able to access secret values. Maybe they're stored in Secrets Manager. Maybe they're stored locally in the service, in a database, things like that. So those are, or another really good example is they might be able to get access to cryptography keys stored in KMS. So there's multiple different examples of what can happen with privilege escalations in the cloud, even without attaining admin level access. To demonstrate this, we're going to take a look at a specific type of privesc using the IAM attach role policy action. This is straight out of one of our courses and one of our hands-on labs that goes by that name. It's a capture the flag lab. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out there. But for this quick scenario that I'll walk through here to give you an example, let's say that we have a basic AWS environment. In that environment, you have an IAM user, and that IAM user is a support user. They're supporting maybe an internal team or something like that. To be able to do that, they have to have assume role access permissions for that support role. This is very common. This is following best practices. You have different roles that give you different permissions. And so in this case, our support role or our support user, excuse me, has access to the support role and they can do basic support actions. Except unfortunately, one day a threat actor is able to compromise this user's access key. There's multiple ways this can happen. Maybe the support user was writing some sort of script and they committed the access key in a GitHub repository by accident, and then maybe that was a public GitHub repository, so everybody can have access to it. Or and a very common way that this happens as well is maybe they got phished. They received a phishing email, it looked very legitimate. Maybe it looked like it was from one of their other team members asking for the access key or something like that, which you should never share, but they just fell for it, right? And so in that case, the threat actor gained access to the access key. The problem is, as soon as the threat actor gains access to that and they assume that role, they realize that they don't have a whole lot of permissions. Maybe they just have some read permissions for some EC2s or S3 for non sensitive buckets and things like that. They don't have a whole lot of access. However, through some very basic enumeration skills, they're able to discover that that role has a policy attached to it, and that policy grants action of IAM attach role policy. If you're not familiar with attach role policy, it essentially just gives you the permission and the ability to take managed AWS IAM policies and attach those to a role. So in this case, the threat actor is able to take managed policies and attach them directly to that IAM role, including the AWS managed policy called administrator access, which is the highest level access that you can get apart from root. And so, if you're able to attach this policy to one of the resources, like a role that you have access to that you can assume, then by default, you receive admin level permissions. And as long as there's no permissions boundaries or service control policies or things like that that would restrict your access, then you would essentially become a complete admin of that AWS environment. And that's literally all from just that one block of code, that one block of JSON. Really, frankly, even less than that. It all comes from that action of IAM attach role policy. So I love this example. I love this scenario because it's so simple. It's so simple, yet we see the stuff like this in the real world happen over and over again. And it shows you that with just one line, one badly misconfigured line, in an IAM policy, you can end up with a very nasty privilege escalation attack. And so that's what we're going to talk about, trying to prevent by using as many tools as can be practical. And in this case, using AI for writing secure IAM policies. So we're going to take a quick break here to give the chance to transition over to Ihor's hands-on demo and demonstration. Do you have any questions so far about what I went through? I know it's kind of going fast through it. I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about the AI portion, but any questions about Prevesk so far, anything that I need to clarify, feel free to drop that in the Q&A section. But otherwise, on that note, I'm going to hand over the reins to you, Ihor.
Yes, thanks. Let me just share my screen and I will start the presentation. So hopefully you are able to see that.
It's pulling up
And
now.
yeah, so let's talk a bit about how AI can be helpful for writing secure IAM policies. And actually, if you are talking about AI technologies and specifically large language models, probably most of the entities, if not all, try to use them for some tasks during their job duties and somehow utilize this tool for assisting in different kind of tasks, trying to learn some new skills and actually working with different challenges because AI actually revolutionized this way and helped us to do a lot of cool stuff and actually do it a way easier because you even do not need to know all the things. You can just go to AI. It can be ChatGPT. It can be Gemini, it can be Grok, or is anything else, and you just submit your prompt and get response. So one of the areas where AI can assist us, it is writing secure IAM policies and in general working with IAM policies, because you don't need just to create an IAM policy. You can have an existing IAM policy and you want to understand what is the issue with this policy. Are there any security considerations that should be taken into account, and actually what can be done even to improve this policy and make it better, so you will able to avoid similar scenarios that was demonstrated by Christoph. And actually a lot of other tasks. Probably one of the most interesting cases that I have seen was with AWS Lambda functions, when uh, every Lambda function in the infrastructure was able to delete and actually manage all other functions. As a result, by compromising even one Lambda function via like API gateway endpoint, you as an attacker was able to actually take control over the complete infrastructure and actually produce a lot of damage to the infrastructure itself, get access to sensitive data, and do a lot of more actually tricky stuff and damage the environment. So how AI actually can help us to deal with this? Uh, Before we go to the actual prompts that I tried and actually that are my favorite, we will start from some general rules that will help you to avoid information oversharing or even information leakage, because even when you start working with tools like GPT, you see that warning that you should avoid sharing sensitive data, as it can be used to train the model itself. Or we probably also heard about different cases when even some secrets were leaked in this way. And that's why you should follow some basic rules in order to not overshare some information, and in order to make an AI really useful tool, and not some tools that will lead to damage. So if you're talking about rules, you can see them on the screen. It is, do not try to not using real account, resource IDs, names, regions, etc., in order to not disclose any sensitive information by accident, and actually to avoid some issues with privacy policies and compliance. Also, second thing that is probably also very important is to be more specific when defining policy requirements, because if you just go and type, please write me AWS IAM policy that allows like write operation to some bucket, you will get a badly configured policy, and you will have to spend a lot of time to somehow modify it, make it to be actionable, and add to your account. Instead, if you specify as many details as possible, you will get a better and structured policy that will probably satisfy your requirement right from the scratch. So you won't need to spend a lot of time for adding some missing parts or reconfiguring it and so on. Then, from my own experience, it works better if you create a dedicated chat for writing policies, where you not have like a conversation with a large language model, but you just have some prompt that you are using. You submitting this prompt, and for different cases, you will get your output and work with that. In this case, you will avoid situation when some previous responses can affect your current policy, and in that way it makes work with AI a way more efficient. Also, try to experiment with different AI systems, because all of them has some advantages, disadvantages, and in many use cases, some of them are better than other, and vice versa. And the last but not the least, validate generated policies, because you never know if it is valid and you can just go and use it. You should somehow verify that there won't be any surprises, and that this policy can be actually attached to your environment. And remember that first rule is to not use real account or service IDs, so you will probably need to replace them before using the generated policy in your environment. Now let's talk about some prompts that can be used to generate an IAM policy. I
Real quick,
have conducted.
sorry, but before you keep going, because it's a question specifically related to the prior slide, let me project this. So the question was, for bullet point number 3, do you mean create a dedicated chat for each policy?
No, but when you just start writing policy, you can create a new chat, and this will be chat for just for generating policies and nothing else.
So not for each policy, but just for policies in general, basically.
And if you see that with every new policy, you see some interactions and you see some impact from the previous your request, then it is recommended just switch to the new chat, and it makes work with LLM way more efficient in terms of writing policies and getting a valid response.
Cool, thank you.
So I experimented a lot with different like ways to on how to instruct LLM to produce the desired output, but at the end I managed to create the following template. You will be able to get it from the presentation. So in general, we should add some context, and in this case, it is act as experienced cloud security engineer, and then create an IAM policy that satisfies the following requirements. Then one probably of the most important and the things that we are interested in is to follow the principle of least privilege, because it will help us to avoid privilege escalation issue. It will help us to avoid actually abusing a lot of best practices that are defined by AWS and actually other vendors. You can see them on the internet. Also, this policy should contain only the defined below permissions, because it will help to avoid situations when you receive some actions that you won't need. And in that way, you also introduce some possible paths to conduct or privilege escalation, or maybe to get some extra permissions once the resource is compromised. And that's why it will help you to avoid such situations. Also specify AWS account ID, and just you can just use this from this, my sample prompt as is, because you can see that it is just incremented numbers, and the same goes for S3 bucket. So I just call it its sample test bucket, and as you can see, for me, just it is like a tip that helps to get a better output, and close it in double quotes, and specify what actions you need from this bucket. So in this case, it is allowed to read and write objects to the specified S3 bucket. Also, we need to start and stop EC2 instances, and let's also specify some sample IDs. It is also like 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, and so on. And we specify the default US East 1 region, North Virginia, and that works well. Also, for this case, I tried to generate a policy for sample like web applications that uses EC2, S3 bucket, and actually has some data in DynamoDB table. And I also specified that I need to read data from DynamoDB table, provided its name and actually region. Now let's look at the result. As you can see, I used two different models. It is ChatGPT and actually Gemini. For if to compare them, in case which ChatGPT, it is ChatGPT 4 plus subscription, and Gemini, it is like general free model. So in case with GPT, I got better response, and that satisfied all my requirements with no some additional actions, because in case with Gemini, I got some extra actions as a three delete object. And you can see the comments that it is optional for deleting objects. And then there was a comment explaining that you can delete this permission, but if you just miss it somehow, you will get and policy with additional privileges, and that's why in this case GPT was like my favorite one for generating policies, because for many experiments I saw that it shows better performance, and when you specify exactly what you want, it gets exactly the output that you are waiting for. So AI, it's not just for creating policy, but also you can use it for analyze existing policy. The same thing as we had for generating policy ensures that you delete or replace all sensitive information from policy before sending it to the AI. Because once again, you can accidentally share some sensitive data, and you won't know how it can be processed and if there can be some data leak. So in this case, we ask actually GPT Gemini to analyze the provided IAM policy and actually do the following. So what we are interested in, actually, it is to check if it allows the principle of if it follows the principle of least privilege, to highlight overly permissive actions, describe suggested fixes that can be used to fix the detected issues with our policy, and actually to provide a new secure version of the policy with all the suggested fixes included. And also, when you want to specify your policy, from my own experience, it is better to add this between some tags like we have in HTML. As you can see, in this case, I used the tag policy, and then added my policy that I would like to analyze with all sensitive data replaced with some dummy data, and then submitted it to the LLM. As a result, in case you can see the output from for GPT. So original policy contained overprivileged actions for S3, code build, Lambda, and actually IAM services. And in case of compromission, it would lead to harmful consequences. As a result, we got a way better policy with a minimal set of actions. In case with S3, they were limited to get object and list bucket, because from my experience, that's probably the most used actions. And then we have start builds and list builds from code build. Similar for other actually parts of this policy. So we had the least privilege policy with all the explanations and actually all the things that we asked for. And as a result, even if we don't know all the actions, if we are not sure about some like privileges that were grounded, we can get a clear explanation on why it is important, and to get a better understanding what went wrong and how it is possible to fix that. Here you can see the same question, but I asked Gemini for that. And as a result, we have for S3 only get object action. For code build, we have get build and start build. And for Lambda, there was only invoke function permission left. So as you can see, there are differences between these responses, and that's why one of the rules is to experiment with different LLMs and actually choose the one that fits your requirements the best. Because in this case, you will be able to get the output that satisfies your initial requirements and really helps you to improve your infrastructure security. If you are not if you are talking about the situation when you know what you would like to get at the end of the way, and you have understanding of different permissions that should be used, then you can use the long way. It is using AWS policy generator. Here you can specify exactly all the services, actions that should be allowed. You can specify some ARNs, and as a result, it will take you probably much more time in comparison with AI tools. But at the end, you will have probably the least privilege access policy with all the things that can be just copied, and you can insert it in your environment. So that's the long way. You will be able to access it from the presentation because I added links to this service.
And on that note about the links, we had a question asking if we could share the presentation after the webinar. And the answer is yes. As you can see, there's quite a few links that are in this presentation. So as soon as we're done, the recording is going to get processed by the service. That can take a few hours. So it may take me a few hours, maybe later today, to send a follow-up email. But in that follow-up email, I'll have a link to both the presentation download where you can click on the links as well as the video recording, just so you know.
Yep, that's great. And next step, as I mentioned, you can generate a policy, but you should somehow validate it. And for this purpose, you have both native and open source tools. Let's start from the native tools, and it is AWS IAM Policy Validator. There is also links, so you will be able to access them. And AWS IAM Policy Simulator. It comes in handy when you need to check if the generated policy satisfies your requirements. So you can specify all the actions and like simulate call to this API and check if your policy actually works as expected, and you will be able to achieve the desired output with this policy. But there is also one cool open source tool called Parliament from Duo Labs that also helps you to check your IAM policies in JSON format and actually find some misconfigurations, and in many cases find some potential privilege escalation flows, some issues that might lead to overly permissive policies. It can be integrated in CI/CD, so you will be able to continuously check your IAM policies and actually ensure that they work well. Next, probably set of tools. It is regarding the detecting insecure or unused IAM policies, because over the time you will definitely have a lot of policies that are not needed anymore, and you should ensure that they are not available anymore, and that reduces your security posture and improves the general security of your account. For this purpose, if you are not talking about some open source or general tools like Prowler, there is a native tool called IAM Access Analyzer, and you can just configure it, return back to it probably after a week, and you will have a clear picture of your account. What are the unused permissions, policies, general users, and some credentials. You will be able to get like a structured all the information in a structured way, and to go over these findings one by one in order to fix them and in order to ensure that everything that do not comply with your requirements is fixed and won't cause you any harm. And as many people tend to use infrastructure as a code approach, then at some point you will need to check your templates for some misconfigurations, and when there are policies inside these templates, you also should ensure that they are secure, and you won't introduce any issues with privilege escalation, with security, and follow all the best practices. So here is plenty of tools that will help you to achieve that. First one, and probably one of my favorites, is Trivi from Aqua Security. It helps you to check not only for overly permissive policies, but also to ensure that your CloudFormation template, CloudFormation or Terraform template is secure enough, and you are following all the best practices. Same for Checkall. It also can deal with both CloudFormation and Terraform, and it contains numerous checks that will help you to better understand why the exact finding is an issue and how it can impact your security. So that's also a great tool that can be integrated. They are both, all of these tools, almost all probably, except Snake Infrastructure as Code, they are free to use, open source, and you will be able to integrate them in your CI/CD. Next tool, CFN-NEC, is designed specifically for CloudFormation, and it also serves as the two previous tools for ensuring that your CloudFormation templates are valid and do not contain any issues, as well as checking for overly permissive IAM policies and some misconfigurations with them. And the last one, it is Snake Infrastructure as a Code, and as in case with Trivia and Checkout. It covers CloudFormation and Terraform and helps you to also find some misconfiguration issues with the policy itself, but as well check if there are any overly permissive policies and detect and even suggest some fixes for these policies. So before we go to the CI/CD tools demo, maybe there are some questions. If no, we can move forward to the fancy stuff.
If you have any questions, now is a great time to ask.
So I will continue, and in case any questions arrive, I will be happy to cover them. We will start from IAM Access Analyzer. I already pre-configured it for detecting unused access. If you go to IAM Access Analyzer tab, you will and you didn't configure one, you will have option for this. And as I said, after some time, you will be able to go back here and see all the findings, including unused passwords, unused access keys, roles with unused permissions, and actually users with unused permissions. Then you can go through them one by one. And actually, for each finding, you will have a detailed description that will help you to understand how it works, what is wrong with this finding, and be able to cover this in order to ensure that everything works as expected and you do not have some overly permissive policy or privileges that are not used anymore. So you can just go and try it with Access Analyzer because it is a really useful tool that helps you to find a lot of stuff that should be fixed, and it will help you to avoid some possible issues. You also can set custom tracking period for 30 days, 60, or whatever you want, and actually it will help to better understand your current security posture. Next one that I would like to highlight, it is IAM Policy Validator. I already covered in my presentation, and when you have a policy copied from AI, you can just insert it in IAM Policy Validator, and in case if there is some misconfiguration, mismatch, like just let's do some intentional issue, as you can see, we it detected error with invalid service, and you can easily like cover it, check, and work on it in order to ensure that there are no some issues that requires your attention. It also contains some checks for overly permissive policies, and actually as a result, you will be able to cover them as well. And actually, that's probably also an interesting tool that will help you to build your policy from scratch, because on the right side, you will be able to see all the stuff for adding new statements. And probably the final one from some native tools, it is Policy Simulator. You can insert your copied policy in the dedicated window, click Apply, and then select actions that you are interested in. Let's check from some get object actions, but let's change our resource just for the demo purpose to like asterisk, apply the policy, and try to run simulation. As you can see, we get a result. We even can navigate to the certain statement in our policy that allows it. So otherwise, you will be able to check that your policy is invalid and does not allow you to achieve the desired outcome. And that's all for AWS tools. Now let's go to the demo of different tools that can be embedded into your CI/CD and help you to ensure that your IAM policies, your infrastructure as a code templates are secure enough. And actually, with every new commit, with every new pull request, you will be able to also cover this moment and ensure that no new issues are introduced in your infrastructure. As you can see, probably all the tools that I covered in my presentations, they are presented here. Also, I added some vulnerable templates. There will be a link to this GitHub repository. It is public, so you will be able to just fork it and play around. Regarding the vulnerable templates, we have some thing called CFN God. It is intentionally vulnerable infrastructure as a code template that can be used for testing different tools and ensuring that they works well. Also, I generated some sample insecure policies using AI, and they work also well for this purpose. And for Terraform, I added one of the scenarios from Cloud God application by Reno Security Labs. Also a great playground if you want to test for different pen testing scenarios. And there is also one policy specifically for Parliament tool in JSON format, and there is sample just insecure policy. You will be able to navigate through them and see how they look like. Let's just open like this sample policy and check how it works. So as you can see, we have overly privileged code build. We have overly privileged permission for EC2, and we hope that it will help us to trigger our scanners and raise some issues. So if we're now talking about scanners configurations, GitHub Actions, it is a very useful instrument that will help you to cover issues with your policies while working inside your version control system. And a lot of tools have native support for different CI/CD tools like GitHub Actions, and that's why it will be easy to integrate them into your workflow. Also, every workflow from this repository has a lot of comments that will help you to better understand how it works and where you should look for in order to ensure that you are scanning the right like a piece of your repository and you are scanning your policies that you are interested in. Different tools have different settings. For example, for Trivi, we can select for what scanners we are going to apply. And actually, if we want to save them in serif format, if yes, we will be able to then review all our findings in GitHub security tab and then code scanning. As you can see, for every finding, we have like a preview with details of what actually went wrong. We have severity, we have some additional information that will help us to cover this thing. And actually, that's a very useful tool. But you should remember that for there is difference for like open source repositories and for private ones, because for private you should purchase GitHub enterprise plan and their like security extension to the enterprise plan. But for public repositories, you can use it from the scratch without any additional payments or without any additional configuration. And here we can see that our tool, our tree, detected issues with one of our policies. We have detected finding. We have some information about this and even link to a rule that matched this misconfiguration so we can learn from it and we can get more information on how it works and why we should fix this. Same works for other tools. And if you are talking about workflows, you can set different ways on how they will be triggered. Let's review one more time this Trivi Cloud Formation Scan. As you can see, now it is set to be triggered manually. So you can go to the Actions tab, you can select your workflow, and you can just click Run Workflow and wait for probably several minutes until it completes, and you will be able to review the results. As you can see, I manually triggered it, and now probably, hopefully after 30 seconds, we will get results and we'll be able to see how it works. Same for other actually workflows. Most of them can be also triggered manually just for in order to be able to see how they work. If you want to check what was detected by your scanner, you can just go to the build details and see how it works. In this case, we do not see our findings right in the logs because we choose the option to export them into serif report format. But if we go to, for example, checkout, you can see that the build failed, and it can be used actually to fail a PR hook and do not allow to merge it until the issue is fixed. And we can see all the findings with also links to the related documents that will help you to better understand how it works and what should be done in order to fix that. Probably Checkall, Trivi, and Snake are my favorite ones, but other scanners are great as well, and you can use them for different purposes. And if we are talking about some automated checks for our pull requests, as you can see, here I used the Trivi scan template for Terraform, and once someone opens a new pull request, and actually in this case I just set IAM permissions to be overly privileged, there will be launched a scan, and in case it fail, you can set a rule that won't allow to merge this code into main branch. That works well because you will protect yourself from introducing some overly permissive rules, and in that way, like adding some vulnerabilities to your infrastructure. And you can also review all the findings. They are written well and detailed, so you will be able to know more about the finding itself, how it works, and even a standard or compliance that covers this check. Now I just want to show you how it works in terms of the workflow itself. So let's open our Trivi Terraform scan. There is a link that will help you to better understand how it works, or you can just Google for possible configuration options that cover GitHub Actions, GitHub workflows. And in this case, as you can see, we enabled it for pull request to the main branch. That will our main goal, and we can just move forward with it. And for every new pull request, we can scan our policies and ensure that they do not contain some critical findings. So that's probably all from my side. I am stop sharing the screen and passing my word to Christoph.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for showing some actual examples. And I know we had another question about, can we get this repo URL? The answer is yes. That will be included in the slides that we send after the fact. It'll be a few hours, but I'll send that on as soon as I can via email. Now, we had a couple of questions come through here that were related to part of the presentation. So let's go ahead and go through that as we start to wrap up here. I know some of you are going to have to hop off because we're nearing the hour mark, but if you're able to stick around, stick around. We've got a couple more things to show you. So the first question that we had was, are any of these tools, let me project it here. Are any of these tools that you listed already integrated with ChatGPT or something like that, like Gemini?
Actually, I probably seen that only SemGraph. It is also static analysis tool. They were trying to integrate GPT into their tool, and in this way to improve the responses. If we are talking about the tools that were in the demo part, they do not have a direct integration with GPT. From my own experience, I have seen only one plugin for writing secure IAM policies, but this is deactivated now, and there is like some fork version. I am not sure if it is safe or how it was produced by, but if we are going to answer to these questions, then the answer is no. So they are not directly integrated with the chat GPT for now, but in future I am sure that we will see some of the tools that have this integration and actually uh, utilize AI for analyzing policies and producing some recommendations.
Another question was, can OPA Rego policies be used for IAM policies check? And then they added afterwards in Terraform code.
Uh, I think yes, because I saw a lot of similar projects, and you can just research on your own how it is used. I like mostly work with cloud formation, but for Terraform, I think that there is a lot of stuff to check, and actually, most of these tools cover that as well.
Same here. I mostly work with CloudFormation, so I can't say for sure, but I would be surprised if they didn't. That would be kind of surprising to me. All right. Next question is, how are we sending trivia results to the code scanning tab?
For this purpose, we use serif format. Actually, and one of the workflows that I demonstrated already has such integration, so you will be able to review how it is done. And actually, what I'll probably love the most, you can integrate it with your, for example, Slack, and you can, using Slack webhooks, you can just send results to Slack, and your team will get notified about new findings, about new failures, so you will be able to react properly and actually notify the team about possible issues. Same works for AWS. You can set up a webhook, and instead of using GitHub Actions, you can just create a dedicated code build that will be triggered once you create a new pull request, and code from this pull request will be analyzed inside the code build.
There's another question. I'll start by answering it. And then if you want to add anything to that, which is, there are many advantages, but what are the potential risks of incorporating AI into the creation and management of IAM policies? One of the main issues that I've run across with using AI for generating policies is anytime that I try to add conditions. So, action allow of this effect of this resource, and then condition, and then maybe using tags for conditions, or using IP address, or like any of the limitations that you can set up with conditions, it seems to really struggle with that. It'll just straight up make things up. And so if you're just blindly copy pasting that, you might have some major issues, right? Or maybe it misunderstands how tagging conditions work. And there are some specific gotchas that have to do with using tags and things like that in policies. So I would I personally, I would use it as a starting point and for basic stuff. And then, of course, always double checking what it's outputting and what it's producing. And then using those tools that Ihor was showing us for validating that it's actually doing what you think it's doing. That would be my start to the answer.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because actually with AI comes probably great opportunities, but also great risks because at some point you might get an overly permissive policy, or you can get some wrong policy with some misconfigurations. And actually, if you go straight away with this policy and try to use it in your infrastructure, you could end up with or even failed builds, or you can end up with like overly permissive to your environment, and that can potentially harm your infrastructure and lead to potential data breach. So you should always double check what AI is producing, as Christoph mentioned, and in this way it will probably be the most effective usage of AI tools.
And then the last question we have here, but if you have any more, feel free to go ahead and answer. We'll stick around for a little bit longer, which is, can GitHub Copilot be used for generating policies? The answer, I believe, is a strong yes. I don't see why it wouldn't be able to do it. It's kind of funny, and to this point as well, and I think also piggybacking off of the prior answer, when Ehor was talking about comparing and contrasting different platforms and different models, Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, things like that, I would say every few weeks, honestly, just keep revisiting that, because as I've used one, sometimes it just starts getting worse and worse. And so then I might hop over to a different one like Gemini, and then that one might be better for the time being, and then it starts getting a little bit worse. And so I bring that up because when I tried Copilot maybe a couple months ago, I didn't get that many great results from it. It just, I saw a lot of people talking really big good things about it, and I compared contrasted, and it gave me worse results almost every time. But maybe tomorrow it's different. Maybe now I hop on and it actually generates better policies. So I know we showed two different ones in this presentation. Try them all, and see what produces better results. But yeah, it should be able to generate them, no problem.
Yeah, I also think so. And I would just add that there is also Code Whisperer from AWS, and you can also use it because it was designed specifically for working with different cloud resources, and it was designed like to generate IAM policies and all the stuff. So also try this one. And you will be able to get prompts together with presentations. So just go experiment and share your results. It would be interesting to hear what you achieved, and actually maybe to like exchange our knowledge.
There's also some plugins for VS Code if you're using VS Code that you can use Code Whisperer and Copilot as examples directly in VS Code, so it can help you with some of that stuff right away, and before you even get to GitHub or any of those pipelines. I think we answered most of the questions that came in here. We're going a little bit over time, so let's go ahead and quickly wrap up here. If you have more questions, feel free to ask, please. That's what we're here for. And then, of course, afterwards, you can connect with us on social media and in Discord as well. So, if you want to give us just a quick overview of TechMagic, please.
Sure. So actually, we are known as a software development company, but we also have a strong security expertise. And in terms of security, we are doing penetration testing for web, mobile application, cloud infrastructure, and network. We help teams to ensure that their application or infrastructure are secure enough. And if there are some flaws, we provide recommendations on how to fix that. We also have managed security services that will help to build security DLC to add some security to current processes and actually enforce security practices. We also provide trainings related to security awareness, social engineering, phishing simulations that will help to ensure that your colleagues know how to deal with these type of attacks, and actually to ensure that they have all required skills to be resilient. And we also help companies to achieve compliance by preparing them to certifications like ISO 27001 and actually SOC 2 that are probably popular nowadays. And if you want to know more, there will be links, or you can also book a call with our sales manager, and or you can just drop me a message to the email, and we will be able to provide you more information on the interested topic.
And then on my end for cyber, if you're interested in learning more about AWS cloud security, topics like the one that we just talked about today, we have multiple different courses. We've got about 20 different courses here. We have almost 30 labs, and we're building a lot more labs. And these are hands-on labs that you can one click deploy. It'll give you that environment where we actually have IAM privilege escalations. There's an entire course dedicated to IAM privesks where you can walk through that example that I gave at the very beginning of this presentation, and many, many others. You'll deploy that lab environment. You'll walk through. You'll try to find the privilege escalation path on your own, or if you need help, we also have written guides, step-by-step guides that walk you through the steps to be able to capture that flag and get to the end goal. So check us out. We have a bunch of hands-on labs. We have over 60 hours of training. About half of that is free. The other half just requires a cyber membership, or some of the courses you can also purchase as one-time purchases. So please check us out if you're interested in learning more about AWS cloud security, which is what we specialize in. We've got some resource links here if you want to grab a screenshot, but of course, I'll be sending this afterwards, so you'll have access to this via email, but feel free to grab a quick screenshot if you need these links right away. And then finally, thank you so much for attending. If you have any more questions as we part ways here, please let us know. Ihor, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know it took some time on and effort on your end to put this together. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing with us today. There was one comment, it wasn't a question, so I didn't present it, but there was a comment. I don't know if you saw it in the Q&A section from Rick, who said that this was a great presentation before they had to hop off. So you did an awesome job. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you everybody for attending. If you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, and if we're not already connected, please check out those LinkedIn links on the presentation here. We also have a bunch of upcoming webinars and some prior webinars as well. You can go to cyber.com/webinars. We've got one, actually two coming up. We've got one coming up with one of Ihor's coworkers, Victoria, who's going to be showing us how to implement security assessments using Prowler in AWS. And so that's going to be a very practical and hands-on demo as well. And then we also have the founder and creator of Prowler himself, Tony, who's going to be joining us, I think in a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, something like that, to be able to talk about Prowler and how to use that for security assessments as well. So two really good security assessment presentations coming up. Be sure to check those out and register at cyber.com/webinars. Ihor, anything else to add as last minute parting way
Actually,
wisdom?
thank you for actually having me today. And as a beta tester of cyber.com, I highly recommend this resource to anyone that is interested in learning AWS security and AWS pen testing. So as also Christoph mentioned, if you have any questions, you can find us on LinkedIn. So feel free to ask some questions, share your knowledge. And once again, write secure policies and avoid being attacked by malicious actors.
Avoid being in the news.
Yes.
For those reasons anyway. Thanks so much, everybody, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for attending. See you next time.